Father Chris, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, John.
Well, you just published a new book on Pope Benedict called The Word Made Love, the Dialogical Theology of Joseph Ratzinger, Benedict XVI. And then boom, he steps down. Uncanny timing. What's your reaction to this, given his writings, since that's where he speaks to us most clearly?
Well, I think it's especially interesting in light of the historical significance of it. It's something new that's happened in the life of the Church. For this lifetime office or appointment as a pope, he's realized that times have changed and the historical circumstances are different now. People live longer and you only have so much energy when you get into your 80s and so on. And so he realizes that he's part of that tradition, but the tradition is also a living one. And so there's room for development within the tradition.
Your book offers also, Father, a unique insight into Pope Benedict himself and his writings. What do they say to us?
Well, I think especially as I see his writing and his way of presenting Christianity, it's really about a story. It's a story that's always unfolding. And there are lots of different characters in the story, and we are part of that story in our current circumstances. But at the center of the story is God speaking to humanity and God desiring a relationship with us. And he continues to speak in creation. He speaks all throughout the Old Testament and salvation history, giving the law, speaking through the prophets to call people back to the law. But ultimately, he speaks in his own Son, in Jesus, the Word made flesh. And the fulfillment of our lives at every moment in history really is to be in dialogue with his own Word who has become flesh. So Jesus becomes the center of history and really the source of meaning for our lives at every historical moment, as different as they might be.
In your book, The Word Made Love, you talk about this dialogue, this conversation, really. But a lot of times, I think people either don't realize they're supposed to be in a conversation or just aren't listening. Do you think Pope Benedict will help people realize this?
I think if people give a shot at reading some of his stuff, especially in his homilies, I think they're very striking. That might be the greatest legacy that he leaves behind for the Church, is in his new and fresh kind of presentation of Christianity, in kind of restarting the story, proposing the story and inviting people in to listen to the story in a new way. I think especially for the Church in Europe and in the United States, for example, one of the problems is people have become so accustomed to Christianity, they figured, well, we've got that all figured out, we know what that stuff means, and we're not too impressed by it. Because it had become maybe more intellectual, and he wants to propose a different way of considering Christianity. It's not, he says again and again, Christianity is not about a bunch of rules to follow or ideas in the abstract to assent to, but it's really about a person. Our faith is about a person, and then therefore our relationship with that person drives everything. And like every relationship, it's ongoing. It needs constant attention and constant communication, and good communication starts with listening. So he gives that encouragement for the Church, for us as individual people, ordinary people. Listen again to what God is speaking to us, and maybe be ready for a surprise in what God is speaking to us now.
Good advice. Now, your book also, it gives us perspective as Catholics. Many of us are sad by Benedict's departure, of course, and while we may not see him again, he will, don't you think, continue to speak to us through his writings?
Certainly, and there are massive amounts of it, and almost all of it translated into English now, so it's very helpful for us. And again, I really highly encourage your audience to take a stab at some of those, starting maybe with his homilies. There's one book called Images of Hope, for example, that's a series of homilies that he gave on certain feast days, and he's got a very vivid way of uncovering the essence of Christianity that we thought maybe we were accustomed to and comfortable with, but he has a surprising way of putting things. And I, again and again, as I was doing my research and reading his stuff, I was just surprised in these little twists and turns that he would make and kind of catch you off guard a little bit and see things in a new way.
But to hear him speak, to see him in person, he's just such a gentle man. But if you do read his writings, I've been privileged enough to see a few of them, you see that clarity and the essence of who he is, which is really a teacher.
He's really a teacher, absolutely. He's a teacher and a pastor. He was one of the expert theologians at Second Vatican Council, and one of the things that he really challenged the rest of the theologians and the bishops there was to say, we've gotten accustomed to trying to articulate the faith sort of in abstract ways. And the original documents that we're going to go into the Second Vatican Council were sort of more philosophical. And he said, these are fine, but we really need to be speaking the language of shepherds and pastors, not the language of scholars. And so that helped to kind of reformulate the way those documents in the Second Vatican Council got put together.
Well, thanks, Father Chris. We appreciate your time, and we'll look forward to checking out your book, The Word Made Love. Hopefully it will shed some light for us into Benedict and his writings. Take care, and God bless.
Thanks very much, John. I appreciate it.